Okay. Okay, great. Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. Welcome to the January 9th Curriculum Subcommittee meeting. We have a good agenda today. And after our introductions, we'll jump right into approving minutes.
Okay, sounds good. So welcome everyone. As a reminder, the purpose of our Board of Education Curriculum Subcommittee meeting is to collaborate between the Board of Education stakeholders and school-based leadership to discuss all aspects of curriculum, instruction, school culture, and climate in the Weston Public Schools. We do review our norms every meeting, which is we would love to see everyone's beautiful faces. So if you, when possible, if you can keep your cameras on, that'd be great. We do have open dialogue at times and presentations as well. So if you're not speaking, if you could mute yourself to reduce any background noise, that would be appreciated. We are always present and engaged based on our agenda, and we make sure that our discussion and our questions are focused on the topics that we've planned prior to the meeting. So I think, Bernie, you're going to first approve the minutes from the last couple months meetings.
Yep, we've got a bunch of minutes to approve to round out 2023. The first one is October. Can I have a motion to approve the October 2023 minutes?
I can do the motion. Let's see here.
Okay. All right.
Move that the curriculum
applied
committee
for any
approve the
answers?
October meeting minutes.
Good. And I will second it. Can we get a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
So I was not present, so I will abstain. I can still do the motion, but I will abstain from the vote.
Thank you. And aye. So motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve the November 2023 minutes?
I understand.
Move that the curriculum committee approve the November
So
2023
let's see
meeting
here.
minutes.
Now, have you
And I'll
tried to
second.
keep yourself,
And
updated
can I
on
get a
this
vote
stuff?
on November minutes?
You're teaching yourself.
Aye as well. Aye.
Labs.
And I.
Anything like that?
Motion approved. And the December 2023 minutes. Last motion.
Move that the curriculum committee approve the December meeting minutes.
Okay, and a second. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Great job. Those were a lot of approvals. Well done. So today we have two presentations, or lack of a better term, but we have two conversation topics around curriculum and instruction, and we're joined first by Principal Megan Canetta from Weston High School. She wants to take the floor to talk about some of the updates regarding the course request timeline and process. And so welcome, Megan.
Thanks, Tina. So I just wanted to take a few minutes. It's at that time of year again, where as we're heading into midterms, we're also starting to think about course scheduling for the next school year. We're going to be posting our course selection scheduling calendar for the 24-25 school year on our website, and it'll be sent home to families as well. It'll also be linked in my week ahead, and we try to keep that connection going from the week ahead to the school counseling website to families. So on January 24th, we're going to start with an advisory for students in grades 9 to 11 regarding the scheduling process. We're going to help students to work on a time management worksheet where they can consider all of the things that they participate in over the course of their days and weeks so they can make really healthy decisions on which courses they want to take. They'll also have access to our program of studies and our academic pathways guide. In addition, this year, we've also surveyed departments, so we're also going to share information about how much homework students can expect in a particular class, from a standard level class all the way through to an AP level class, and what that commitment of that course looks like for them on the average week in terms of homework. From there, our teachers will provide course recommendations late January into early February. And then on February 2nd, our course selection screens are going to go live in PowerSchool for grades 9 to 11. And students are going to work with their families and their school counselors, looking at the course recommendations that are made by teachers to select the most appropriate school schedule. In my week aheads, I've shared in the last few weeks that we really want kids to select the course courses that are most appropriate for them. We really believe that students should be able to challenge themselves, and we also believe that they should do this understanding when they sign up for those honors and AP courses, the expectations and the amount of work that is needed to be successful in those classes. We are no longer going to have a waiver process. So typically in previous years, there was a waiver where a student might not be recommended for a course. They would fill out the waiver request form, and that would go through approval process. In order to really provide equitable access for all students, we're really entrusting families and students to take a look at the courses that they're recommended for and choose the best schedule for them. We had a conversation at our last faculty meeting. I really don't believe that any of us have the capability of predicting the future. So it's really hard for us to determine when a student is ready to challenge themselves in an AP or an honors course. So we're really opening up that process to empower families and students to make the right decisions for them. So if a student wants to challenge themselves, they may not have a recommendation, but we want to open up that possibility. And of course, I'm just going to keep reiterating, we want students to do it in a really healthy way. And the intention of this is not to overload our schedules, but it's really to provide equity around the process and access to challenge for all students. From there, we're also partnering with our 8th graders and the middle school. We have our first introduction to high school coming up next week on Thursday, January 18th for our 8th graders. They'll be coming over from 1 to 2:30. We're going to have a student panel, a teacher panel. Students are going to meet, 8th graders are going to meet with their actual counselor. In previous years, they have met with a counselor, but we were able to, Mrs. Starzik, along with the rest of the counseling team, is actually able to assign our 8th graders to the counselor that they will have when they start high school. So next Thursday is the first time students will be meeting with their counselors, and also they're submitting questions to us so we can answer some of those preliminary questions for 8th graders. So really great start to our 8th to 9th grade transition process. And then our course selection screens will go live mid-February for our 8th graders after they have had a transition night as well on February 15th for parents and 8th graders. And then around April 12th, there's a deadline for students, for all students to make changes to their course requests for the 24-25 school year. And then we will be able, before students leave for the year, to show them the courses that fit in their schedule. They might not have their Bell schedule yet, but they will see the courses that they that fit into their schedule and they were able to get. So that is our scheduling process. There are some tweaks in there, and we're really excited to get started. I'm planning for the new year.
That sounds great. Any questions for Megan before we transition? And if I could just emphasize, I love that the high school is starting to really provide more opportunities around access to classes and give the students more ownership around this choice decision-making process. However, with that comes a lot of great responsibility, which is to make sure you have ongoing dialogue and reflective conversations with your teachers and with the counselors before, making any haste decisions, just because, you want it, like Megan said, you really want to make decisions that are in the right interest and the best interest of the student and what's best fitting for them. So I'm assuming there will be a lot of opportunities for open dialogue and discussion. And so make sure you take advantage of that.
Students are going to meet with their counselors. And I just also want to add that depending on sometimes there's this idea out there, well, I'll stretch and I'll really push myself to do this. And then if it doesn't work, I'll just drop down in the fall. We want to really, really caution folks against that. We are a school of 710 students, and there is no guarantee that we're going to have room in classes in the fall if anything backfires. So we don't want to discourage anyone from challenging themselves. And at the same time, I keep balance and health are super important as you're prescribing your schedule.
Yeah. So doing that research and that planning beforehand and before you make those decisions is going to be key in this change of process, right? Yeah. Great. Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Megan?
I have a quick question. So I remember the waiver process. Actually, I think Bernie and I last year had a little bit of an offline conversation about the waiver process. Why, what was wrong with the waiver process, or what is the reason to change it?
I don't know that there was anything like quote unquote wrong with the process. I think that in the best interests of everyone, sometimes, the waivers came in, there was a deadline. Sometimes we would allow waivers to come in beyond the deadline. And the way our summer schedule works, might be counselors in the building on a certain day. So maybe those waivers are being reviewed or a certain assistant principal is in. And so what we're really trying to do is just make the entire process more even and equitable. So it all happens at the same time for everybody. And I think, like I said, and I've talked to folks here, I can't predict the future, right? I can't even predict the future for my own children, right? So I have a child that might not do well at the end of their 8th grade year. I don't know. And does that mean that they can't take an honors class in their freshman year, right? So I just really feel like we're kind of sometimes assuming powers that really no one can predict. And so really it's about encouraging a more equitable process too. So it's not a matter of whose counselor is maybe in the building, on that day in the summer and who sees that, oh, there's an open spot in this class. It's really, here's when we do our registration process. Here's all the information out in front and ahead of you. And so everyone has equal access to the suite of courses. And then we're also building the most reasonable schedule because, it's kind of like that garbage in, garbage out theory of computer programming. Like we're going to have all of that good information in from the beginning, so we can ideally build the best schedule with the least number of constraints for all students.
So the new process is the guidance counselor and the teacher no longer make the recommendation.
Nope. The teachers still make the recommendation. So really what we're doing is we're equipping families and students with all of the appropriate information necessary. So that's where teachers are still going to make the recommendation, right? As they always have. And we're also providing that extra information about how much homework you could expect in certain classes, right? And then we're doing that time management worksheet with students in PACT or our advisory program. And then families are going to decide what's the best schedule. We also know that there are so many students in this building that could be recommended for 5 or 6 AP courses or 7 or 8 AP courses, right? You could be recommended for 2 different AP classes in one subject area. And that doesn't mean that as a school, we're saying you should take those 6 or 8 AP classes all at once. We're saying, here's what you're recommended for. Now, of these, pick what sounds reasonable and is of most interest to you. The question, the example I gave this morning is, if you want to challenge yourself in an AP class, but you're not a great writer, right? Or you don't love reading, then I would not recommend challenging yourself with AP Lang, right? That would not be the AP course that you would want to stretch yourself with. So really, it's really about families knowing the student they have in their house, kids knowing themselves and what the work that they're willing to commit. If you're a student and this is going to be a stretch for me, but I'm ready for the challenge, also understanding I'm going to use the office hours of my teachers. I'm going to use the math lab. I'm going to use the writing center, and I'm going to use the resources at my disposal and really commit to this.
Okay. Then my final question would be, what I liked about the waiver is that it puts some level of responsibility on the student to understand essentially they weren't recommended for whatever reason. And if they want to challenge the lack of recommendation, there's going to be responsibility on their part as well. So how do you offset or plan to address perhaps a student who didn't have the waiver in, they opted to take the course and now they're struggling? This is actually the conversation, Bernie, I don't know if you remember, but we had sort of this conversation last year, which is, how do you offer these programs to the widest range of students who are interested, but conversely, you don't put a student in a set up to fail position. And I felt like the waiver sort of did that.
Yep. That's why those counselor conversations are going to be really crucial, and counselors are going to help the family and the student work through those. That does not mean the counselor is assuming responsibility for those overrides either. We want to be really clear about that. And also in PowerSchool, what we're working on, and we haven't determined whether we have a paper form or if PowerSchool is going to work. We believe, because there are schools in our area that have used PowerSchool, where there's a final like message verification that uses much of the same language of that override or waiver form that we had, right? Like, I am assuming responsibility for the schedule that I am choosing, understanding that there may be courses in here that I was not recommended for, right? And the parents are verifying that and the student is verifying that. If we think that we can build that into PowerSchool, because we know that districts have been doing it, if for whatever reason we can't, then we also have to, we're going to consider the backup of a piece of paper to kind of capture that, to your point, David.
So will I be able to ask, which I always do, this time next year or when the time is right, can we find out how many students applied for the courses under the new way of doing it versus the way we did it in the past? And of those students that applied, how many were accepted? I'd be interested in knowing if it opened up interest more wider, or if
Yeah,
it
so we
actually
will, because like right now, for example, we know that I believe 70% of the waivers that were submitted last year were approved. And we also know, because this was also a conversation at the high school, of the waivers that were approved. So these were students who were not recommended. I want to say it was like 200. I could be, don't quote me on that number. I would have to go back. But of the 70% of students who submitted waivers and were approved, we know that only 2 of those dropped down, right, into a lower level. So to us, it was like, okay, so here are kids that are taking a risk. They're believing, they're working really hard. So that level drop is not coming. When we see a rise in level drop, we've done the research to say, okay, that's not as a result of students who have waived into those courses. So we're doing with this with some confidence, feeling like students who are electing to waive, right, are doing it because they're committed. We also recognize that we still have that mystery 30% that were denied the waivers, right? But that's where we're going to continue to evaluate that data. And PowerSchool is really helpful with that as our student information system to say, here are the classes that kids registered for, and here are the courses that they were recommended for or not recommended for.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We talked about the waiver process a lot last year, this time in the meeting, and I'm really excited to see us move in this direction. I feel like from an equity perspective, everything you just said, if there's a time in life to be an academic risk taker, this is it, because you've got so much structure and help in place to be able to do it. In terms of college preparedness as well, I feel like when you get to college, you also are open to take your classes at your choosing and at the level that you think is appropriate. So having had that practice and being able to see where you're successful and where you might have fallen short in the high school environment where you have all those supports is such a great thing to do. So I'm excited to see how this works out for the students. And for those that may not have taken advantage of the waiver process in the first place because of that barrier, we've removed that from the opportunity to challenge themselves. So it's awesome. Just to clarify, so I understand the opting in for like an AP class. Is the same thing true of leveling? So if you want to opt into honors versus a regular class, it's the same process?
Right.
I think.
Yep. I think we also have to remember that it's not going to be without growing pains, right? With every change comes a little growing pain. So there may be students who challenge themselves, and there, like I said, there may not be room. And so this could also be an effort in persistence and resilience for some of our students as well.
Is this the first time that parents are going to have so much more of a bigger role to play in the course selection? Any thought about doing a parent seminar or even making a video to guide parents into how hard they should push their students, or how to more healthfully balance or when to apply that extra pressure to take a challenge?
So I think that comes in individual conversations as we select courses and kids meet with their counselors. I would say if parents have questions, if they don't know if they're pushing too hard or they should push harder, I think that's definitely a conversation that they should engage in with their counselor. This also pairs really well. You've heard me talk about challenge success over the last 18 months. We did a well-balanced student workshop with our teachers. We did one with our parents. It was really well received, although not well attended, but it was so well received that Challenge Success is coming back at the end of January, and it's really great timing. While the topic is a healthier approach to college admissions, the gist of it is really about healthy school choices and the pressures that come in high school, because we're all focused on that trajectory of college. So many of our decisions in high schools like ours are about where we're going to next. And sometimes we're missing the forest for the trees. So really focusing on a healthy, balanced schedule, having kids experience new things, but also really finding their passions in high school and really learning how to like dig in and that like grit piece of, perseverance. And like we've talked about resilience. So it all really ties hand in hand with those messages that come through in my messages through the week ahead, the messages from the counseling office. So really all part of that plan. But yes, Bernie, I also like your idea of some other messaging out there as well. So the course selection process, that schedule is going to be on the website. I'll share it, and we'll do some more messaging around healthy and balanced schedules as well.
Thank you. Really exciting.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Next on our agenda, it's kind of funny because we're going to talk a little bit more about equity and equitable access as we present today, specific to K-12 mathematics. I'm going to put up the next agenda item is going to be focusing a little bit on a new initiative and project that is happening out in the schools. As you are aware, we have our curriculum and instruction leaders are working hard out in the field, and starting this month, you all see that? Yeah. And every month after, we've been presenting at our subcommittee meeting since last month, and we've had our curriculum and instruction leaders come and kind of speak to some of the highlights on the initiatives that they're working on out in the schools. Last month, we really focused on K-12 social studies. This month, we are going to be focusing on a new initiative that two of our SILs are leading at Hess and at WIS. Erin Barlow is our curriculum instruction leader from WIS, supporting math and science in grades 3 and 5. And Kelly Del Vecchio is our curriculum and instruction leader at Hess, supporting math and science in grades K through 2. Riley Rappaport is our 6 through 12 curriculum instruction leader in mathematics, supporting our secondary level. She was not able to be here today, but she has been supporting both Kelly and Erin throughout the process, and will be doing so as we keep moving forward. This team is specifically leading and supporting the district goals and the school goals to ensure Weston's continually providing a high quality standards-based curriculum using evidence-based practices in the classroom. We all know how important math education is to the future success of students and, frankly, our world at large. And so math is all around us. It lives in every aspect of our daily lives. It influences career fields, specifically science, technology, engineering, art, and economics. And so this initiative we take very seriously, and we take the decisions and the design around our K-12 math trajectory to heart, especially when we learn about new emerging research and we're given explicit feedback as it relates to these goals. So today's presentation is a direct result of some ongoing, our ongoing commitment to that goal of providing ensuring that we're continuously providing high quality standards-based and a coherent K-12 curriculum for our teachers and to our students. And so we've got some questions that we want to make sure that we're able to answer by the end of today's presentation. Why are we going to be piloting a new core resource in at the elementary level, specifically in grades 1 to 5? How do we determine the core resource to use in this math pilot that we're going to be exploring today, that Erin and Kelly are going to be talking about a little bit today? Who's involved in the pilot? What does the experience look like if a teacher and a student is involved in the pilot? Most importantly is how we're communicating to families beyond today. And many of you, if you were involved in our committee work last year and attended some curriculum meetings last year, you may have recalled that we engaged in a tri-state consultancy visit in the spring of last year. And at that time, our team, there was a district team that we gathered together, and we talked about, what would be some outcomes that we would like to gain some more insight around when we had this visit from our colleagues in the field. They call them critical friends in the field, and they are people from the representative tri-state area, specifically supporting math education and math curriculum. And we really wanted to ground our work and our experience around Weston's curriculum with some of the new research that emerged and new position statement that emerged from the state of Connecticut in 2022, which was equity in math education, which ironically, we did not plan this, but that's kind of what Megan is talking about. You'll see some of those pillars of what is involved in that equity statement that the state has adopted around access. And so you may have heard this last year, but I wanted to take a moment to talk about, before we get into the pilot, what is the Tri-State Report? What did the Tri-State Report provide us? And what was that commitment that the state has adopted for all districts to ground some of their work in when it comes to providing a high quality K-12 equitable math education for students? And so there's three major pillars of that report. The first commitment towards achieving it is talking about, do all of our students see themselves as capable mathematicians? And are we providing students with opportunities around choice, student agency, and challenging them to push their potential and have the confidence to do so? The second pillar talks about, our mathematical program, and does it reflect the needs of quantitative literacy, critical thinking, which is needed for the 21st century workplace. More specifically, does the program that we provide reduce the role of computation and emphasize more about conceptual understanding, and more an emphasis around computational thinking and the research around utilizing modern technology, right? And then the last, let's see if it comes up. The last pillar talks about alignment and advanced systems. So alignment among the standards, alignment of the curriculum within a K-12 continuum, alignment around pedagogy and instructional practices and assessment, and alignment around the policies that connect all of those pieces together. So it's really great to see and hear that, at a K-12 level, we are looking and reflecting and changing some of our practices so that we can think about access, about availability around courses for students to push themselves and see themselves as higher level mathematicians if they choose to, based on some of their foundational skills. This also talks about the systems that we provide around remediation, as well as acceleration and intervention, right? Reflecting on de-leveling and breaking down any barriers that even Megan talked about around access for high-level mathematics, and promotes more of an assets-based or strengths-based approach in mathematics education. So when Tri-State came, we talked about these conditions that we want to make sure that our K-12 curriculum is founded on and grounded in. And so these were some reflective questions that we wanted to engage in with our Tri-State critical friends. Does our district focus on an assets-based strengths approach? Do we have the essential conditions to ensure that we have a math trajectory that encourages students to gain access to rigorous mathematics for all students, right? So when we talk about all students, we talk about students in that may be identified as special education or may be identified as MLL. How are we ensuring that all students are provided with that same level of expectation? What do our assessments look like? Do we have assessments that are actionable and provide explicit feedback for teachers and for students? And then lastly, is our K-12 continuum coherent? Does it support the development of procedural fluency, computational understanding, and reasoning? So as a review, just wanted to ground some of this conversation in some of the feedback that we've received from Tri-State and also the emerging research from the state, is what were our essential questions from last year? So there were two. we asked our critical friends to give us feedback around to what extent do our instructional strategies promote a student-centered approach to learning mathematics in grades 5 through 12. And then we also asked them to give us feedback explicitly around our 5 through 12 continuum, focusing around curriculum and how we're providing all students with an equal opportunity to access grade level content and maintain high expectations for all. So this probably is the first time that maybe we synthesize. There was a lot to unpack in that report. You can see that we gave them a lot of evidence around those 2 essential questions. And for this presentation specifically, we really wanted to focus on how some of the feedback we got around curriculum is leading, or we're using it to leverage some of our decision making and leverage some of our planning around this pilot that Erin is leading at WIS and Kelly is leading at Hess. And so the Tri-State report provided us with some clear statements of consideration, right? Things to think about based on those essential questions and the evidence that we provided to them. The evidence that we gave them was physical curriculum documents, student work samples, teacher lesson plans. We gave them assessment data. We gave student survey data. We gave them opportunities to actually visit classrooms and actually observe classroom instruction in all of those grades. We interviewed, and maybe some of you were involved in those interviews. We provided a series of interviews with different stakeholders, right? Teachers, both general ed and special ed. We did interviews with students. We did interviews with parents. We did interviews with Board of Education representatives. And then we did interviews with all administrators. And so that data was synthesized in a very large report based on those 13 team members that came and evaluated and provided us with some explicit feedback. And although they gave us 25 statements of consideration, remember we had 2 essential questions, these 5 explicitly talk specifically about curriculum and that K-12 continuum. And so that is the grounding of some of the reason why we wanted to take some action around some of those considerations. And you can see that today, these indicators really focus on a coherent curriculum reflecting on our current resources and how they align, how they support the alignment of current research and the expectations around math instruction and the alignment of high quality access for all. And so Erin's going to start off with the conversation. Kelly's going to jump in as well. We'll have an opportunity at the end to maybe open the floor for some dialogue. We're fortunate to have Patty and Laura here today too, so they can jump in as well as needed. And I'm going to first hand it over to Erin, and I hope that provided you with some context before we actually go into the pilot program that Erin's going to talk about. So thank you. Erin, you want to take it?
Sure thing. First, thank you to the committee members for having us today. We're really excited about the work that we're about to engage in. So how did we decide? We've got some outside unbiased parties who rate and evaluate programs on the markets to schools based on multiple data points. These are Ed Reports, What Works Clearinghouse, Student Achievement Partners, which you may know as Achieve the Core. And recently, the Connecticut State Department of Education released a model curricula, and K-12 has been finished and is released. And in that model curricula, there are programs that the state recommended that would align with their curricula. So we also looked at those programs when we decided our pilot. So our look-fors, this is what we looked for when we researched the resources using Ed Reports, What's Working Clearinghouse, and Student Achievement Partners. And we landed on 3 programs with the help of our grade 5 teachers. The first program is Bridges in Mathematics. Then we have Eureka Squared and Illustrative Mathematics. And I'm going to go through each of these programs next and how they rated within the look-fors. Okay, so we'll start with Bridges in Mathematics. So Bridges was released in 2016. The chart shows the ratings in each grade level from Ed Reports. And as you can see, they scored very high in each category and in each grade level. A component of their program includes something called Number Corner. And Number Corner is a 20-minute reinforcement spiral review block meant to be presented to students separate from the 60-minute math block. So in an ideal situation, students would engage in math for about 60 minutes, maybe go to lunch, come back, have Number Corner, go to a special, come back, have Number Corner. There's some sort of break in between the two. So when we looked at the instructional minutes of the day at both Hess and WIS, we don't currently have a structure in place to sustain a daily 90-minute math block, even separated. So after we consulted with their representative, our teachers, principals, we deemed that this wouldn't be great for us moving forward. So then we looked into Eureka Squared. It is a K-8 mathematics program. So again, you can see how it rated within each grade level. Eureka Squared was released last March. It's currently being used in Shelton and Trumbull. And they've got perfect scores in the focus and coherence and rigor and mathematical practices. And their usability rating is also rated very high. And that is a 60-minute block.
So this is remaining on our list to pilot and review, Erin, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
just-
We're gonna move forward with this one.
Yeah, so just to clarify, when you go on Ed Reports or you go on What Works Clearinghouse or you go look at some of these ratings, those little green circles that are underneath each of the grade levels, they can be either green, they can be red, or they can be yellow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So red is like, red flag, no, not aligned, or, red flag. Yellow is like partial, right? Like it's working towards focus and coherence. It's working towards rigor and math practice standards. It's working towards usability. Green it's a go, right? We've reviewed it, we vetted it based on these 3 indicators, and that's how they score all of these programs and curricula resources for districts to kind of vet. So when Erin worked with the teachers, they spent some time to go on those data sites and really peruse and look at all the different rankings that they have for the different resources. And the goal ultimately was to try to pilot 3. And you'll see that these were those 3. But as we started diving a little deeper, we started already realizing, like, as Erin said, Bridges wouldn't even fit our current structure. So just wanted to make sure that we zoomed in on that aspect of it. Sorry, go ahead, Erin.
That's okay. Next slide. Yep. Okay. So now illustrative mathematics, it is an open source program. The K-5 rendition of it was released in April of 2022. Wilton and Madison are currently implementing IM, and New Canaan weaves it in with some other resources that they currently use. The lessons and units include center activities for reinforcement and spiral review. And so as you can see with the Ed Reports, they too have scored the top in focus and coherence and rigor and mathematical practices. And their usability rating is just slightly higher than what Eureka Squared was. So everything's still in the green and good. The one thing that makes IM different is that trajectory. It is a K high school program. And it too requires a 60-minute daily block. Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to jump in. So when we're looking at a comprehensive math program, we need to look, in addition to our philosophy of teaching math, we also have to look at the resources and assessments and intervention programs that we currently have in place. So all of these screenings and assessments and data points and resources that we currently use, are something that we want to make sure that they're going to continue to enhance our core curriculum, core resource that we choose, because we believe, all of these pieces are strong, and we want to be able to support the students who are outside of the core classroom in receiving intervention, that they are also going to support what's happening in the classroom. We don't want to have any disconnect there. So besides looking at the program, the resources individually, we also want to look at how they are going to fit in our big picture of teaching mathematics to our students. And all of these pieces here are things that we use internally with teachers and students and planning for instruction. So it was important to us that these pieces meshed well with that new resource, because it has to kind of fit into our whole big picture of teaching mathematics. So who is involved in the pilot? This is just a quick table of the grades, but I just wanted to speak to it a little bit. Grade 5 teachers are really leading the work in this project. So I just wanted to share that information and why, because it looks like just 3 teachers, but those are all the math science teachers in 5th grade. So this cohort is going to be offering this opportunity to all the students in 5th grade. So they will all get the experience of being part of the pilot program. It's a large cohort. The teachers and the students, parents, administration, everybody will have that opportunity to have some feedback. So that grade 5 is really leading the work there. Teachers in grades 1 through 4 were given the options to voluntarily choose to participate in this pilot program. The other reason, just to back up for a second, 5th grade is teachers will also not be part of the implementation of the new reading, American Reading Company. So those teachers will not be part of the big rollout of the literacy piece at WIS. So these 3 math teachers kind of have the opportunity to move forward with our math instruction next year, whereas the other grade levels, 3rd and 4th, will be starting their new literacy. So they're just participating in the pilot now to have their experience and their input and their feedback, so we can make a decision for everybody moving forward. And again, I felt as the curriculum leader at Hurlbut that I wanted our 1st and 2nd grade teachers to also have a voice. So they have each volunteered to do a unit together with me, so we can, get our experience and our input and feedback so that we can help make the decision for the K-5 piece. So just a little quick snapshot here. The first table on the left shows the actual units or modules that each grade level has chosen. And they were really chosen based on the time of year that we have to do this instruction, and that they will be a seamless replacement into what's already happening in our pacing and in our scope and sequence, because we don't want it to upset, the entire year. And it was an easy unit to kind of put in place there. We want to ensure that the grade level standards are all being met. So regardless if it's being taught through a different resource, we wanted to make sure that it was a good match to use. So it tells you the grade and which resource and what their units are. The picture on the right is a chart that was done as a team with the 5th grade teachers and Erin during one of the professional development days. And it was important for us to look for all of these things as we shared the look fors in the programs, but we wanted to focus on the student-centered and really come up with, create a shared vision of what student-centered math instruction looks like. So we're really trying to make that, that vision clear and make sure that the resource really helps us to meet our needs, what we want to do for math instruction. And then lastly, communication with parents and guardians is crucial. And this letter will be sent home. This is just a kind of an image of the top of the letter. This letter will be sent home to all of the 5th grade families, and then it will be sent home to the select first, second, third, and fourth grade families who will be participating in this pilot program so that they're all aware and can offer their input as well. So that will be how that communication piece is going. And then I'll turn it back over to Tina so she can share kind of planning forward for us as a district.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Aaron. You guys did a great job. Yeah, so part of the conversation is, okay, so we've done our research, we've vetted the tools that are out there, we made a decision on which ones that we want to pilot, we've mapped it out on our pacing guide, we know who's going to participate. So then what, right? So then, David, I think you asked this question at one of our budget meetings around vetting resources and how do you make decisions? So this presentation is actually a real good lens around what we do on a curriculum side when we're making instructional decisions like this, because we don't take these decisions lightly. And so we do have a rubric that this EQUIP rubric is provided, and there's research based behind it. When you're vetting curricula and resources when making decisions, there's a ranking on it. And so we're going to use that EQUIP rubric too when we make our decision. We're going to include students in the decision-making process. Like, what did your experience feel and sound like when you were engaged in this unit versus this unit? We're going to include the teachers. What did the planning experience look like for you? What did the plethora of resources available in these different curriculums provide to you as a teacher? And so, as Kelly mentioned before, and also what are the small group options for kids if they need to be accelerated or if there are some opportunities for intervention? What do those individualized components of the program look like? So we are going to use that EQUIP rubric when making decisions, but we're also going to include qualitative components from surveys from our teachers and from our students around their experience, so we can understand which ones are most closely aligned to some of the pedagogy and the student-centered aspect of math instruction that we hope we want to continue with, because we know we've been focusing on that since I arrived. And especially when we talk about professional learning, we've really been focusing on student-centered design in the classroom. And so we want to ensure that whatever updated resource we choose, it continues to follow that student-centered design. So the last piece of this is timeline, right? Kelly mentioned when she talked about those teachers that volunteered in grades 1 to 4 to participate, that we've got some other initiatives too happening out in the district, right? We have, you all know, we've been adopting the American Reading Company curriculum down in grades K through 2, and we want to be mindful of the teachers' readiness to adopt a new resource in mathematics, and we don't want to overwhelm them, nor do we want to impede on the effectiveness of the process in literacy either. So here is an optional plan, and we're going to talk to the teachers about this plan. We're going to talk to the leaders about this plan, and they'll be involved in the decision-making process around the implementation as well. So this year we're going to pilot, and I know there's a lot of details there in that first column there, but I was trying to outline kind of what was in my brain around like the pilot program for this year, which grade levels would be piloting, what would the summer look like for revising curriculum, and who would be in year 2 or year 1 of any new curriculum. So we know kindergarten has actually already adopted a new curriculum. They're actually in year 2 of methodology, which is a strong core resource for kindergarten that's focused on some of our guiding principles in mathematics. And as you know, year 1, grade 6 has already started a new core resource, because we're starting to look at that, that K-12 continuum. So we're also mindful of some of the implementation in grade 6 on up to high school. And then literacy, as I mentioned, that's a new core program in K2. So all these pieces, right, all these jigsaw pieces in place that we're thinking about when we're making these decisions, so that when we plan for the next 2 years, we're very fortunate in mathematics. We don't have to implement all grades at all the same time. We could say next year, grade 5 is going to adopt the new resource, and maybe one grade in grades 1 to 4. That's just a possibility. And then what would summer curriculum look like for that? So in this particular plan, if it was outlined in the way that I have here, we actually wouldn't have a fully articulated, coherent math trajectory from kindergarten through Algebra 1 until 26-27, school year 26-27. And so laying it out there as what our thinking is throughout this process moving forward, even though we've just started investigating and we've just started planning and we haven't piloted yet. The pilot should begin in a week or two. But this is part of our decision-making process within the plan as well, because we know that, we're going to be continuously providing professional learning. That doesn't stop. And we are really fortunate that some of the pedagogy and the work that we've already started around professional learning will better prepare our teachers for whatever timeline we choose and for whatever resource we choose, right? Because we've been focusing on building thinking classrooms, which is all grounded in student-centered practices and evidence-based tools, and focusing around a problem-based approach for teaching mathematics. So we're comfortable and really confident that the professional learning will be ongoing regardless of the resource that we adopt within the next couple of years. So that kind of concludes our presentation around this initiative. I want to thank Kelly and Erin for taking the lead on this and being the highlight for January. Great job. Does anybody have any questions relative to this pilot that we're going to be starting in a couple weeks, and hopefully able to see some actionable responses to some of the tri-state feedback and some of those considerations that they gave us from last year, so that we're actually using that information in an actionable way?
I have a quick question about Bernie, and this is your area of expertise, and I'm going to defer to you to go first.
My first question was, do the units that they've chosen to pilot in the classes map to units from the NWA testing that can be pulled out and compared, so you can actually see kids' scores from previous years under other math, and then in that particular unit you can see how they performed after using the pilot program?
That's a great question around achievement, student achievement. That's one indicator to look at some of the progress and maybe impact, because more than NWA, I'll let the ladies speak, but more than NWA, we're also looking at the curriculum-based assessments and what the student work looks like, and the difference around the student work samples. Sometimes I feel like we get more information with the student work samples than especially around critical thinking and problem solving and communication. But I don't know if Erin or Kelly, if you want to jump in as far as, when we made decisions around those units, what does that look like relative to some of the NWA assessments?
Sure, I can jump in a little bit. So each unit is only going to encompass a piece of NWEA, like one piece. It's not going to be a whole section that we'll be able to look at because we're only doing the one unit. But for first grade, I chose measurement for both of the resources, because the way it fit, and it was in the time of year, and it was when we've always done measurement, and we will have students who will be doing measurement in Math in Focus and students who will have done measurement now in the different resources. So it's definitely something we can look at apples to apples with that one. The other ones are different units that are pieces of different strands of NWEA. So it's possible that they may have an influence, but they won't be a whole strand to pull out and really look at individually there, except for first grade. But Erin, if you want to speak to that.
No, Kelly, I think you're right. So in grade 5, we're going to look at place value concepts for decimal operations and volume with the second program. And then grade 4 is going to be really centered around measurement for both the pilot programs, and grade 3 is going to look at fractions. And then again, like measuring length, time, liquid volume, weight. So like Kelly said, it's going to be snapshots, of those core pieces of NWEA. But I do think that we'll be able to take our data from winter and look at our data from spring and see if we can find some, some growth within those areas and really see how our students did and compare that to some previous year's data.
And remember, if I could add, the vetting of the quality of the tools is done, right? We know that we're not going to bring in any resource that is in the red, just to be generic about it, right? So now we have the luxury of really looking at the student experience. What do we want math instruction to look and feel like to the student, right? So how does that differ from each experience from a student perspective? So that might be something also that we are going to look at a little bit more intensely than maybe we've done, more than just test scores, which is what Tri-State is all about. Tri-State was more than about just the NWA scores or the Smarter Balance scores or the SAT scores. It was really about how they see themselves as mathematicians and how they identify as mathematicians in their experience in the classroom. That was one of our essential questions, and that's kind of what evolved from some of those considerations too.
One other thing I just want to add too, when we had to pick the units or modules that we were going to pilot, a resource is built, to be taught from the beginning to the end, whereas we had to look at units to say, well, how much is it relying on a unit that we haven't taught? So we did look at the units and what the students' knowledge would be with the program they're using, and will they be ready to do this one too? So that was another just piece of deciding.
Have either of the programs been around long enough that they've had students go through K to middle and then high school? Have we seen any difference in those far out projections, middle school, high school math and performance? I don't know if that's a metric that they're able to track for the companies.
So because of the different districts that use the different programs, they probably, unless you actually look at those individual programs, they're all have research based in white papers behind them. Otherwise they wouldn't be able to get that green rating. So they all return high achievement results.
David, do you want to go?
My only quick question, which actually Bernie sort of hit on, was looking for that the data that shows how the students under the new program versus the students on the existing program, how the two are sort of working together, or but then my other real more generic question was, is this on par with the old program? Is this more challenging? Where is it from a academic perspective compared to the existing program?
So the existing program was not part of our options. The existing program that we have is in the red, and the use it in all three of the areas or two of the three areas, I can't remember, on ed reports. And so it wasn't even part of the three options when we looked at replacement moving forward. So we're not even going to engage in a comparison to Math in Focus to one of these three options. Well, two options. We took one of those out already.
But then how do you, I guess my question, I don't know. My question really is from an academic, from challenging the students, is it the same type of challenge, reach, stretch goal, whatever you want to call it? Is it more rigorous or is it less?
So I can speak specifically to Illustrative only because I have background in it, but Eureka, there was training already around Eureka. These are problem-based curriculum, so the students are doing the math all the time, right? It's a shift away from teacher-centered and teacher-directed like lessons to student-centered. There's a variety and a plethora of differentiation aspects built into the program. And that's going to be the support of the curriculum and instruction leaders to help support the teachers unpack and plan to make sure that they're meeting the needs at all different levels in the classroom.
Okay. All right. I think the basis of my question is just trying to understand Weston and with our academic excellence, and knowing that math has certainly been a troublesome area, not just for Weston, but for a lot of districts nationally, quite honestly, although people want to focus, of course, on Weston because that's who we are. I'm just trying to figure out, like, in so many words, are we reducing the academic rigor of a program in order to potentially obtain better scores? Or, that's really the basis of my question. And if perhaps we just have to wait, and to Bernie's point, when she asked her question, if we see how the students are doing with the new program and we can benchmark it and compare it to how students are doing with the existing program, that might inform us right there. But the basis of my question was really, being that math has been an area of challenge, are we lowering the bar? Is the bar staying the same, or are we moving the bar up? That's really the basis of my question.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have to follow up with it because we have nothing to compare it to, and that's where the teacher feedback is going to come into play, and the student experience as well. And so hopefully the next time we will come back and report out on the progress that was made and the decision moving forward, and kind of talk about our implementation plan too. So we'll weave that into the next part of the conversation for sure. Thank you.
Is there a big financial cost between the programs, either just initial startup or consumables over time?
Yeah, so obviously it depends on the implementation plan. It depends on which resource we choose. We know that we are very fortunate in Weston that our current resource we have available to keep for the next, Patty, 2 years. I think we said 2 years. So depending on whatever plan we choose, we can scaffold the different grade levels, and we don't need to do it all like what the state wanted to do with reading. So we also have embedded some of those resources already into the line item for the math trajectory and the math line moving into next school year. But we did not, because this was not my intention, actually. My intention was actually only to start in grade 5 only, based on the Tri-State report. But teachers talk, and they really want to be involved in the decision-making process, and that was really exciting. So we allowed the other grade level teachers that volunteer to participate in the process also. That will help us make a decision around, do we just do 5th grade next year? Do we have the ability to do 5th and maybe one more grade, as I mentioned? And we do have the option of using some of our title carryover funds for instructional materials that would be able to serve in this implementation plan, depending on what they all decide.
That's great. And I appreciate what you said, though, about all of those teachers volunteering to do this, extra work to try something that might not even be something that's set in the curriculum. I think it speaks to how wonderful you all are, and how dedicated everyone is to the students, to really care so much, to put so much work in to make sure we make the best decision for the kids. So thank you.
Totally agree. Patty or Laura, did you want to add anything? No, not yet.
No, I think you covered it all. Very comprehensive.
Great. Well,
Yep.
thank you so much, Erin and Kelly, for putting this together, and for all the work that you're doing, boots on the ground, supporting the teachers and having some open dialogue. Learning something new, like you said, Bernie, is always extra work, more reading, lots of decision making in our brains, because we take these decisions, we don't take these decisions lightly. And so we really value the teachers that are really eager to engage in a new resource and kind of see what the differences are. So we'll come back and kind of talk about that progress, but we wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to explain what was happening before that letter goes out to parents, and before we engage in this work. Thank you. Okay, so the last 2 items on the agenda really are just an FYI. I'll put the agenda back up. As you are probably aware, we are in the middle of the winter assessment benchmark time frame. We are administering NWA in grades kindergarten through 9th grade in both reading and in math. We will be reporting out those achievement scores relative to our district goals in February that will be upcoming. We also have Dibbles 8 in reading for grades K through 3. Nope, grades K through 2, not third yet. That's coming, K through 2. So we'll be providing an update on that in February. And so just as a quick reminder, last year we went digital. No, did we go digital last year? No, this year we went digital, excuse me. So we provide the parent reports in a digital format, just so those on the call here, in the fall and in the spring. And those are distributed in a digital format through Swift K-12 through PowerSchool. And so we do not distribute the winter scores because we ground that assessment data around a variety of different data points. And so conferencing happens and small group conversations happen. So we want to make sure that that's not the only data point we're looking at in the winter. We use a lot of different data points. We want to make sure that there's a conversation around the winter achievement scores as well. And then finally, as a reminder, I brought this up in our last presentation in December. Next month in February, we'll be continuing our presentation for digital literacy and technology in grades 6 through 8. We've done K through 5, and now we're continuing that next month for 6 through 8, and then we'll end in March with 9 through 12. And the library media specialists will be leading those presentations. And that concludes today's agenda. Are there any if you have any additional topics, you're welcome to email Bernie or Chad, or actually it should go directly to you, Bernie, now that I'm thinking about it. But if any requests go to Chad or to David, they can filter right through Bernie when we develop the agenda items for future meetings.
Sounds good. Are there any other closing comments or thoughts before we adjourn for today? All right, sounds good. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Stay
Okay.
dry, stay warm.
Good. Thank you, everyone. See you next month.
Great job.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.